Hi, guys, and welcome back to the show. We are here to help you filter out the BS and become your own it girl. In this episode, we are diving into potentially the scary world of becoming a parent. Maybe it's not so scary for you, but I think that as women, often it has felt like you might have to choose between having a career or becoming a parent. And I got a lot of questions about what it's like to be a parent, how to manage it all, how to have this entrepreneurial dream career while also still showing up as a good mom. There's a lot of expectations around becoming a mother. And I think that this episode is really going to ease your mind about how to unsubscribe from those expectations that are set on us. We are joined by Heather. Heather is a mom of three, a stage 4 cancer survivor, and the author of Dying to Be a Good Mother, and host of the podcast Emotionally Uncomfortable, focusing on parenting as well as attracting profits and growing as a leader. She proudly works to help women feel successful at home and in their work. Guys, I had a lot of cortisol going into this episode, and Heather really helped to ease my mind about what it means to be a parent and how to handle it. And I really hope this episode can help you do the same. Let's do it. Welcome to Confessions of a Wannabe It Girl. I'm your host, Marley Fregging, and I'm here to help you filter out all the bullshit and become the next It Girl. This podcast explores the reality of what it really takes to make it out there. As it turns out, it is way less Instagrammable than I thought it was going to be. I'm still very much a work in progress, but there's simply nothing else I'd rather be doing than chasing my dreams. So let's learn from my mistakes and work together to achieve our dreams with more confidence, clarity, and direction. Let's get after it. Hi, Heather. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
I'm
I
excited.
am I'm also so excited. I'm so excited to talk to you because we are talking to like an audience of women who might not yet be moms yet, might be a little nervous to become parents. We're talking about like career focus, still want to have a career, don't know how to handle the ideas, what to prepare for becoming a parent. And you are somebody who is so about that it's not just about the parent and it's not just about the kid, while being someone who is like, I want women to be successful at home and in their work. So I just think you are the perfect person to talk to about this. So I want to dive into like the fear itself of becoming a parent. Like there's a lot of fear there. So can we really have it all? Can we have that it girl Instagram mom life and have a career and all those things?
Well, I think we see the life that we think we want. And I've had the privilege of seeing behind the scenes of a lot of those Instagram lives and realize that there's a facade, there's a mask of the picture of what they think they want. And one of the kind of sayings or quotes that have really transformed my own life and my journey, and I can get in a little more into that, is it was from Danielle Laporte, and her book came out like over a decade ago, one of her books, which was called The Desire Map. And my biggest takeaway from that book was it's not the thing you want, it's the feeling. And so we see these Instagram lives or whatever when people are saying, I want to have it all. And I'm like, but what does that represent for you? And it's always the feeling, like always. It's the goal, you achieve the goal, and then you're like, oh, that's not what I thought it would be. It's because we were always after a feeling. And I'm the type of person where it's like, have the desire, have the goal, but don't lose sight of how you want to feel at the end result. And then learn how to consciously create that every single day in the moment. And I can get more into that. But that's really what we're after. We're all about feelings, not things.
We're all about the feelings, not things. It's a good way to put it. And because we put so much societal pressure on having a career as having a thing and, you know, giving us self-worth in that thing, I think a lot of people, women mainly, but won't exclude anyone by saying that having career or being career focused, we can be scared to be written off just because you're so career focused and then you find out you are pregnant or you're expecting or you want to have kids. How would you not have people write you off in the workplace just because you want to be a parent.
Yeah, so I'm going to tell a personal story. So, one, I became a mom really young. And so I didn't have the privilege or the opportunity to like grow a career and then add on parenting. So, there's a blessing and a curse there, right? And so the blessing of that was I didn't have that fear, but there's other aspects of my life where I could like see it coming and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's going to be so scary. And then you take the leap and you get on the other side and it's incredibly different. So my approach is I actually, there's two things here. One is we have to be incredibly mindful to not self abandon. My book, Dying to Be a Good Mother, is on the premise, like, regardless if you are a mother or not, is the premise that as women, we are taught that we need to be good for other people and we need to essentially self abandon parts of ourselves to be good in that role. And I remember when I was a young parent, but like I have three boys. They're actually 19. They keep changing their ages, 19, 14, and 11. And I was 18 when I had my oldest child. And I think it was about my middle son when I was kind of like battling with that of I want to be with my children, but I also want to like go after my goals. Like I want to make an impact in the world. I want to start a business. I want to do the thing. And I could feel myself wrestling with that. And it wasn't about having it all, it was about creating my way in that season of my life in an incredibly sustainable way. Because I think the one thing people wildly underestimate is how stepping into that nurturer role, that mothering role, actually changes your identity. And that's something you cannot prepare for. Like you become a different person and your instincts kick in. Like I've heard this from so many people. They're like, I was doing all the things, I was going after it. And then all of a sudden I was like, I don't want that anymore. And so there's different things you desire in different seasons, but I think we need to look on desire and not external goals. I also have a lot of friends who do not have children and have no desire to have children, and then some that don't have children and have a desire to have children but don't have them yet. And I'm like, you need to pay attention to desire. So, what is the desire? And when we lean into desire instead of goals and what we think society tells us we need to be, we can live for the moment every single day and go, what does this look like for me? Instead of trying to seek that externally. It's a very different way to think about how we should show up in the world because I don't want to neglect parts of myself, but there are definite moments where you need to not necessarily sacrifice yourself or abandon yourself, but honor, like, I want to give back. Like, one of, going back to that moment when I was like wrestling with both, I remember feeling like, okay, I need to have childcare to so I can feed this part of myself because I could see that if I didn't feed that part of myself, I was yelling and I was angry and I was resentful. And I'm like, my children don't deserve that type of mother. And then I would have people say, you shouldn't be doing this. But internally, I knew that what was best for me and my children. And so I don't think it's a this or that. I think it's coming back to like, what do I need to feel fulfilled? And that's where people kind of find that alignment, I call it. I don't believe in balance.
I love that you're pointing out that if you didn't do this thing, it could really start to affect how you were already showing up as a mom by not going after what you needed to do, kind of like I always talk about putting your oxygen mask on first. Like, if you aren't showing up like how you want to be, how on earth can you take care of like a little thing that is, in your life and you love and care? But I always think it's worse to ignore that part of yourself and then be like, well, society thinks if I, you know, go after ambitious career goals and I'm not watching my kids, that's gonna do more damage. And really, by you not going after your career goals, are you doing more damage to yourself and your mothering experience and all the things? So I want to talk a little bit about this desire you're talking about. So say you do desire to be a parent and you're in this career. How do you start to look at your life about how to prepare for it. Like, what are the things you need to change, or, what are those conversations you have with your partner or your work environment? How does that look?
I think sometimes I think we live in a culture right now that wants to prepare and be like over prepared, which comes from like a perfectionist energy. And then life is going to show you exactly what you need to focus on. And I think relationships are the biggest judge, like the biggest, like, mirror, right? Like, there is no perfection in relationships, and it could be like a parent, child, you, partner, you, someone else. And so I am all about reverse engineering how you want to feel. Like, if you're not looking at, the visual of this podcast, I have a hat on and it says, how do you want to feel? And part of that is like, that is my North Star. And that goes back to huge part of my journey. But 10 years ago, I was diagnosed with a stage 4 cancer. It's a huge part of my message, which is, how did I get to that point? It wasn't just like one day I woke up and I was like, oh my gosh, I have cancer. Like, that's how society treats it, as like, where did this
Mhm.
disease come from? And it's like, no, 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 no. There's so many things that we're doing that is like neglect, and barely scraping by on a physical level is the expectation. Like, if you actually do put your oxygen mask on, you're being selfish. And I have unsubscribed from that a long time ago. And so when I kind of had my health crisis, I got to a point where I, was reading all the books and I'm doing all the things. And like I said, the whole Danielle Laporte desire map was, it's not the thing you're after, it's the feeling. And so I started living my life very differently, something I developed called energetic time management, which is essentially putting yourself on the calendar first, but it's through desire. And so I'll give everyone like my exercise right now because it's very practical and tangible. I took a journal prompt. Wouldn't it be nice if? And I'm not asking you, what do you want? That can feel very like, confronting to people. It was, what do you like, wouldn't it be nice if, like, magic wand. And we know what we don't want. Like, we know what we want to stop in our lives. So if you're like, I don't know, it could be negative. Wouldn't it be nice if I wasn't angry all the time? Wouldn't it be nice if whatever, you just dump it out. And it can either be like in the positive or the negative, what you want or what you don't want. But you're literally writing out your desires. And if you look at the person next to you, their list is going to look very different, very, very different. But everything that you want is a feeling. So wouldn't it be nice if I didn't have to work anymore? Wouldn't it be nice if I could have a month off? Wouldn't it be nice if I was doing work that I love? Wouldn't it be nice if whatever it is? Ask yourself, what is the feeling that I'm after? And then put the feeling words next to those desires. And you're going to see something called core desired feelings. That's what Danielle Laporte calls it. But it's like the common denominator. No one ever says, oh, I want to chronically feel like shit. I want to be overwhelmed, depleted, angry, frustrated, burnt out. Nobody is ever going to say that. And your word might change, but I want you to see kind of like the data points of what you actually want and desire. So back in the day when I was diagnosed, I literally felt like death inside, like I had nothing left in me. And yes, I was reading all the personal development books. I was in startup in my business. My children were young, but here I am feeling like death. And I'm like, I don't want to feel this way. How do I want to feel? I'm like, I want to feel alive. And then, Marley, I remember having the moment where I was like, okay, I want to feel alive. Like, what would an alive person do? How would they show up? How would they lead their life? And then I got scared again because I'm like, I
Mhm.
have no evidence of an alive version of myself. So my wouldn't it be nice list was like, wouldn't it be nice if we could travel the world? Wouldn't it be nice if I could run a marathon? Wouldn't it be nice if I had all the energy in the world? Wouldn't it be nice if we were financially free? And I had no idea how to make any of those things happen. And there I am, like with no energy, going through treatment, and I had nothing left. And I'm like, okay, day one, what would an alive person do today? And I'm like, she would get out of bed and take a shower. And if that's all she has the energy for, that is closer in alignment with an alive person. And so fast forward, it's those tiny, tiny bites, but like that's the North Star. I'm always like, how do I want to feel? And so when I'm having conversations with people, how do I want to feel? I want to feel connected to this person. Okay, cool. My child is having a tantrum. How do I want to feel? I want my child to feel safe. So I'm probably, if I'm going to have, a little tantrum myself and angry and frustrated, I'm going to learn how to manage my emotions so that my child can feel safe in my presence. And it goes the same with like my husband, or when I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to do this big thing in my career. What is the feeling that I'm after? Okay, I want to feel purposeful. I want to feel accomplished. Some of those feelings too, are those coming from ego, or are they coming from like a deep, deep desire? And so as you start taking the action, you really see like I never identified as a driven, ambitious person. Never. If you would have like that version of me, if you saw me, I know you're like head tilt.
I'm
If you
like,
would have saw me
what?
in Yeah, if you would have saw me in high school. So I got pregnant a few months before I was done high school. Actually, a few weeks. Nobody knew. I was hiding it. But in high school, I was probably the most likely to like not succeed. Like I was not the type A plus student. I was the critical thinker and the problem solver. And I would like the system did not work for me. I was like, why do I have to do that? It's such a waste of time. Well, of course, look at me. I'm an entrepreneur now, right? So I was a rebel. I was like, don't tell me to do that. Don't control me. Back then nobody ever said you have entrepreneurial like skills, like you're a leader, I can see that in you. So my coping strategy was to sleep and shut down. And so I was an underperformer, I was not an overperformer. And it wasn't until I became a mother that I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to fail. And so then I started overperforming, and then I hit burnout. And now I'm like, now I got alignment, which is, oh, I enjoy the game. I enjoy, if I don't feed this part of myself, that actually feels like death. So I'm going to keep pursuing the things I want to pursue while taking care of myself, little tiny bites at a time, and that's going to positively influence my parenting. And I'm going to be wicked focused with the 2 hours a day or 3 hours a day that I have, and get more done and hire a kick ass team and lead people and blah, blah, blah. But we can do those things. No, we can't do it all. We can't do it all at once. You just have to think completely different. But really, if you understand how to lead yourself from like a higher energy and expectation, you can get a lot more done. And yeah, but we cannot abandon those parts of ourselves that, you want to be ambitious or you want to go after certain things. You have to start asking yourself, how can I do that and do this? And then you have to get creative in how you do both.
I love so much of what you're saying because I think we do not think enough about the true desire of what we want to be doing with our lives. It is so much about kind of like this checklist, like, oh, we live our lives and then you get a career and then you could get married or you could be in a serious relationship and then you have kids. And we don't take enough time to even hone back to that true desire of why we want these things, which I think then we can end up in these positions feeling really lost because we don't know why we got here. And it's like, if you start anything or just transition, going through transition phase with doing that exercise of like, oh, I want to be doing this, I want the feeling of, I think it allows you to be creative, to find that space to like make it happen, make it work because you're inspired to do it. If you're not, you're kind of just like, well, I'm stuck here and now I got to figure it out. And I love what you're saying about how our identity can change. I've heard you talk about you have like an identity before you're a parent and then you have an identity when you have one. Does that like first identity like go away? How do you talk to that older identity? What's the relationship there?
Yeah. And I think I'm smiling because I actually just said this the other day. I'm like, I'm reinventing myself probably every 6 months. Like, if you are the type of person that is taking action to better yourself, you are releasing your old self incredibly quickly. So, if you say
Mm.
to yourself, I am the type of person that doesn't like to work out, I don't like marketing. I don't like sales. Well, guess what? If you want to be successful in any area of your life, you have to learn the skill of sales. It doesn't matter if you are in a sales position or not. You have to learn to sell ideas to people. Like, I have to sell my children on getting out the door on time. I have to sell my husband on the crazy adventures I want to go on. Like, there's these skills that we say, or I'm not an organized person, or I'm not a morning person, or I'm not this. It doesn't mean that I have to become a morning person, but if you're constantly pushing your edges of personal development and wanting to grow as a person, you will let go and grieve the loss of your old self. So let me give you a specific example. Not even like my old identity, because I think parenting saved my life and that's a whole other conversation. But I remember specifically where I was overperforming in my parenting role because, and I'm getting pats on the back culturally, like, look at you, you're super mom, blah, blah, blah. And inside, I'm like, not this, not this. I'm going to burn out. This is scary. I'm not happy. I'm not fulfilled. And everyone's like, this is adulthood. Suck it up, buttercup. And I'm like, no, 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 no. And then eventually life was showing me things that was like, oh, yeah, you're right, Heather. This is not sustainable. But I remember, and this is probably when Instagram was getting more popular, and this is like the Instagram lifestyle, when I would see women giving off this identity of this maternal exhaustion and the mother load of, the invisible mother load or the woman load or whatever it is. And I was like, I don't subscribe to that. Like, that is not how I see myself. And so I had to specifically unsubscribe to that identity. And I felt guilty because I didn't want to over identify as just mother. Like, needing to fuel myself with cups of coffee to get energy was not aligned, because I was like, that's not going to work, right? I wanted to feel alive and aligned. It was not aligned for me. Blaming and shaming our partners because they didn't operate the way we did, blaming our children for why we couldn't go after what we wanted to do. I was like, I would never want my child to feel like a burden and be like, you're the reason why I sacrificed everything for you. I think a lot of us, especially women, have grown up with parenting figures like that, and we're like, you could have went after and did whatever you wanted. Stop blaming me. Like, that's a big burden for a child to carry. So I remember like unsubscribing from that, and that there's a moment in time where you have to physically grieve that person, that part of yourself. And a huge part of my story is depression. I mean, I don't publicly be like I was depressed, but like I could barely get out of bed pre-motherhood as a teenager, didn't understand what was happening inside of me. I was this overly sensitive, empathetic human in this world, not understanding how to manage all this energy, not shown like what a healthy woman looks like someone who takes care of themselves. I didn't have those role models. And then here I am in motherhood being like, I don't want to get out of bed, but I have to. And so, kind of like fighting to feel alive again in so many aspects of my life. I remember specifically one moment. I don't know if I was in like doing hypnosis or breath work or like all the journaling and everything that I've invested in. And I was like, she got me here. Like, that version of me got me here, but she's not going to get me to the next version of myself, and I have to let her go. And I see this so often in my clients, whether it's in the parenting relationship or their business, their work relationship. I'm like, you have to give up the people pleaser. They're like, but people aren't going to like me. And I'm like, it's so protective. Or you have to like loosen your control on perfectionism, because if you don't, and why are you holding on so tightly? And it's like, I don't have a version of myself without this. Like this little people pleaser perfectionist has been with me for so long. And I'm like, well, she is not going to get you to the next level. So you either have to like consciously let her go or your life is going to blow up and you are going to be forced to let her go. I bring the deep conversations.
No, I don't think anybody has ever said to me that we have to let our old identities go. And I have it hit me so hard in 1 second, thinking, like, yeah, you're probably right. We should let that go because I feel as though maybe I in the past have held on to those so tightly, thinking that that's going to help me get to where I'm going to be. Yet I'm realizing in this moment, live time, that that's probably what could be holding you back from doing that exact thing. And, I want to bring up this other Instagram idea that I've seen around, and I want to get your feelings on it. And it's the quote of, I don't want to be a mom, I want to be a dad mentality. I would just love to get your thoughts.
Well, I think it's a story or an illusion of what dad is. And I will tell you, I probably would have agreed with that at some point, but now I'm raising three boys. And as they become older, and I've been married for, oh, geez, 18 years ish, 17, 18 years. And I've had many intimate conversations with my husband, and I'm always like, women, women, women. And he goes, men too, men too.
Mm-hmm.
And the more conversations I'm having with men and they're kind of pulling back the curtains, they're like, we struggle too. And although it might not be in mom mode and nurturer mode, but they carry a burden that supports our role. There was actually a Instagram, like a reel that I saw recently, and it was Mel Robbins. Do you know Mel Robbins? She was
Very
interviewing
famous.
her husband. Yeah, Mel Robbins, you can listen to her podcast. She was interviewing her husband and she was talking to him about how 6 years ago he started these like men's retreats. And he was
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, I give him a piece of paper and I'm like, write down what you want. And you would think they're like, I want this and this and this and this. And he's like, we get blank pages. One, because men are not allowed to talk about their feelings. Two, when they go to that, they're like, I don't know. I'm here to provide and to serve. And so when we take a step back, we think, the emotional, invisible load of women is our brains work differently, but the male brain and dad or whoever, they carry a different burden. And they just don't talk about it as much. It's not culturally acceptable to put something like that on. Like, imagine a dad was like, I want to be a mom, right? Like, could you imagine the backlash that would occur if something was posted like that on Instagram? So
Yeah.
they carry two different burdens. And I think when I have that perspective, I can go, I'm wondering the invisible load that you carry. It's not going to look the same as mine. And how can we come together and kind of support each other with this invisible load that we're carrying? Because as women, we
Yeah.
want men to do our work and then vice versa. And it's like, how about we just do our own work and we actually lessen our own invisible load and we help others do the exact same thing? Because ultimately, we are 100% in control of how we want to feel, but we're not taught this culturally.
No. And that is so true. I never thought about how if somebody was to post on Instagram saying, I want to be a mom, the reaction would come back and it would be so heavy. And like, yet we have so much, I feel like, more around the conversation about women and becoming a mom and, how do you do both and, solopreneur, entrepreneur careers. But like, I haven't seen a lot of that in the dad space on social media. Like, where is that
Yeah.
person? It does not exist. It's a big hole there that I don't think we acknowledge enough.
And
And,
even things
oh, go
I
ahead.
see, sorry to cut you off, but I'll see a lot. from dads or men, they're like, I will never say no to my kids. Like every time they want to play with me, I will be there. Well, think about why that is even a thing. It's like maybe because they're like, my dad was never around and he worked so much, right? So he's like, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be all in. I I don't see women saying that. For me, it's a different relationship. Our like relationships with our children are very different. And I think women cannot, we're looking for equality and all of that. It's like, but we complement men and we are not here to do men's work and vice versa. We have to realize we're yin and yang. And like, they talk about the masculine and the feminine. So it's finding that within yourself. It doesn't mean like you can never provide or make money. You can do that. You can go after that, but you really, really, really need to honor your desires and not just like suck it up and push it down. Because when you start to learn how to feel, yeah, you're going to feel your fear, you're going to feel the guilt and the overwhelm. But when you can learn to like manage that energy, you become a powerhouse and your energy source just keeps getting fueled. Like I could put out a lot, but when I'm fueling myself, I'm not neglecting or abandoning myself in the name of I am bad if I do that for others. I now know that feeding myself, my mind, my body, my soul, even if it's 10 minutes at a time, gives so much more to every single human I come into contact with.
And also your partner as well, because, in some situations, raising a family takes two. And I want
Yeah.
to talk about a little bit about this post I saw a very big influencer post about. And she posted on her Instagram and she said, I am so tired of getting like DMs asking like if I have a nanny and how I do it all. And she's like, my husband never gets asked these things, like, how I have a nanny and how I do it all. And I actually responded back to her and I was like, I want to bring this to a different perspective of how I want to see it. I am asking you this because I want to be able to do the same things and I want to know what's going on that I don't see. So if I was in a similar position, what do I do? So I'm going to turn it over to you. What can I do?
Like you said, the reason why you're asking that question is because you're like, hey, please let me know because I want to know behind the scenes of like how to prepare or what to do. And
Mhm.
I think, yes, our reaction can be defensive of like, why are we still asking women this? Right. And it's like, it is what it is. But I also think if people say out loud the support that they are getting or what they are actually doing, it gives other people permission. And when you put yourself out there, you are always going to have people who do not appreciate the response that you're getting back. And this makes me think of one woman that's in my group, and we were talking about, I did this little exercise and it was called a give and an ask. And we were talking about capacity. And everyone was giving like a resource or something that has helped them give more capacity in their lives, time, energy, all the things. And then they asked a question about capacity. And a lot of the gives, people were like, wow, that's so permission seeking. I've been wanting to do that, but I just couldn't do that. And one of them was, I have a house manager. And so she said she had a house manager and then she had someone come in and clean. And so people were asking, like, what does your house manager do? And like, how do you organize that? And you could see her shrinking. You could see her physically
Sure.
like, and I was like, please don't shrink. I'm like, I'm dead serious. Like, I want to know how you manage that. What do they do for you so that you set the standard of what, when I go out and seek that, how you organize that. And yeah, if I could go back in time, like when I started my business, I didn't have a lot of financial resources. But I do remember hiring somebody to come into the house for a few hours, like while I was still breastfeeding, and watch my son, whichever one it was that was little at the time. And they would be in the other room, and I could hear the baby screaming or crying. And like my boobs are just getting so big, and I'm trying to work, and I'm putting noise canceling headphones on. And the amount of guilt that I felt, and I just had to keep persevering. And if I could go back in time and talk to that version of myself, I would have hired support quicker and I would have let go of the materialistic things that I think I needed to purchase or have in my life that made me good. And now, where I'm at, my brain thinks, how can I buy back my time and energy? How much more time can I buy back? How much more energy can I have? And a lot of that buyback of my time is hiring support. And I will tell you, one of the things that I started doing was, okay, nutrition is not consistent. I got to get on this, but nutrition was a huge part of my energy fuel. And so I was counting macros, and I would have somebody make my meals and bring them into the house. No big deal. Okay. Then I'm like, something's off here. It's not aligning. Then I started paying my 14-year-old to do that. Role reversal. Hey, can you make me my meals and I will pay you? Like, you're learning how to kind of be an entrepreneur and you're helping me out. It's a different way to get an allowance, but you have to think outside of the box. Now I have my child serving me instead of me serving my child all the time. I'm teaching this child how to be of service to other people and not just me, like, going out, out, out. I'm learning how to receive as well. So honestly, the way that I think now is like, how can I, instead of being the doer of everything, how can I be like the manager or the supervisor? And my focus is, how can we do less better? And with a whole female team, I have noticed we overcomplicate things. And I do think it's because our is so diverse. And I'm like, how can you make that simpler? How can you make that simpler? How can you make, and yeah, so it's funny how we waste so much time and energy over complicating things because we feel like we're not enough. And I will say to myself, if I deeply trusted myself and I felt competent and enough, how would I show up? What would I do differently? And I'm also, this might be a little faux pas, probably the season I'm in, I look to men for inspiration as how they scale their time and energy. I don't want to live exactly like them because there's certain aspects of my life I do not want to outsource. But I'm like, okay, if they can do that, what is my version of that as well? And it's just fascinating if we can look at each other instead of hide and gatekeep things and be like, no, 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 I do it all. Because the reason why we're afraid to communicate that is because we don't want to be judged and seen as like bad mothers, bad women.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that because it goes right into the work smarter, not harder category. And you're bringing that creativity into parenting, which is also probably quite fun for your kids. And I'm just thinking on small scale, when I got to young adulthood, I didn't know how to cook. Like, I didn't know, I couldn't figure out how to put a meal together. We're learning a skill while doing it. I'm just seeing nothing but positive boxes clicked here
Mm-hmm.
for all of us. And I really also agree with what you're saying about looking to men. Even as you were saying that, I was thinking about my fiance and me, and I was like, the amount of time it takes him to do something is significantly less than me because he trusts himself that it will get done in that time. I will sit there and work myself into thinking, it's not there, I need more time, I need to recheck it, I need to redo it. And I'm like, wow, I should really just trust myself that when it's done, it's
Mm-hmm.
done.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. And I've also heard you talk about how that as a parent, it isn't only you who can teach and grow your children, like mentors and other relationships outside of the home, which I think have also insanely helped to raise me personally. You know, can you bring an insight of how to create those relationships with, family members or friends and helping them in the world of your children?
Okay. So if I was to have children today, I would show up very differently than, like, if I had a fourth child today, I would show up very differently than my first child. And what I noticed is when your kids are young, we have so much control. Like, there's this illusion and perception. The biggest pain point is typically their behavior, like the tantrums, and you're trying to learn all the emotions. But for the most part, you do have control over what they eat, what time they go to bed, whether they listen to you or not is a different story, what they dress as. And then usually they get toddlerhood, and then you're like, some of it's going out the window. The second they hit teenagehood, any control that you felt you had, out the window. And raising boys, I would say the last few years I also had like a little pre-midlife crisis where I was like, I need men that are doing this work in my life. Like, I was actively seeking out good humans that were into personal development. I'm like, you are a good role model for my boys. And I would beg them to be in their life in some capacity. And so I think it is selfish to think that like, I need to be everything to everybody and to like do it all. And I was like that. I was honestly like that pre-diagnosis. If my children had macaroni and cheese fed by somebody else, I was like, oh, their life is over. I've screwed up. But I realized the control was me feeling out of control internally. And so then I realized this is a communal thing. And I know our culture is individualized and people say, where's my community? I don't have my village. And yes, you can create it. And I do not have like a whole bunch of people around me, but I actively try to get the kids involved in other things and put them in situations with other people that I think are good mentors for them. Or even being like, look at this YouTube video. Let's watch this YouTube video together. Let's listen to this book. And if you have to manipulate them, that's okay. Like, watch this YouTube video, I'll give you more Wi-Fi time. But it's like, play these games of like putting them in different situations, rather than putting all of that on yourself. Like, even my 14-year-old who's like, I don't like this or I don't like that. And I said, go do your research, then come back to me and we can have this conversation. But I'm not going to do the work for you. The old me would have put that on my plate and then I would have did all the work. And it's like, how can we co-create with our children, with our partners, with everyone? Why are we putting the invisible load that is on our plate is often there because we're like, yeah, I'll do this. Yeah, I'll do this. Yep. And we're like, so we have value as we are just by being in people's lives and how we show up. It's not about what we do for others. So there's ways that we can kind of shift how we show up and lead for people instead of doing their work for them. And that's how I see parenting.
Oh, I love it. Heather, you have really eased a lot of stress, I feel, and cortisol I even have around this topic with this wonderful conversation. You do so many amazing things, including coaching and whatnot, and you have your own podcast. Can you please tell everybody where they can find you?
Yeah, they can go. Well, the podcast is called, it's behind my head, it's called Emotionally Uncomfortable. I actually put a lot of content out. So there's 3 episodes a week. There's usually a interview of some sorts. And then there's one that I do on parenting, and then one I do on attracting profit. And profit to me is time, money, and energy, because I just think if women are profitable, we're going to change the world. And we can do what we desire to do, but it is going to be emotionally uncomfortable. So the podcast is the place to find me, and any free resources I have. I give a lot of tangible support. You can just check it out on my website at Heather Chauvin, CHAUVIN.com.
Hey, thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
Thank you so much for listening to Confessions of a Wannabe It Girl. Don't forget to rate and subscribe to the show. As always, we'll see you next Tuesday.